So go ahead, J.L.
Okay. I'm J.L. Zoeckler, and I am a facilitator and trainer and having some fun with the CCL this week.
And I'm Geoff Zoeckler. My background's actually chemical engineering, but I got a master's in creativity, and I've been applying that into empathy-based innovation programs and facilitation over the last 5 to 6 years.
Now, both of you work in the space of innovation. Can you tell me a little bit about how does innovation in your minds connect to the idea of leadership?
Sure. So I think innovation is really critical because it means you're starting with some level of curiosity that leads to creativity, that leads to an impact that you can have on others. And that's often where leadership comes into play as well. As people think about, I want to develop my own leadership, why? The why behind it is similar. If they want to create change, they want to make a difference. And that often gets communicated as innovation.
I even think about that culture of innovation is going to come from permission to, fail and to seek other things and new ideas, and that leadership's going to heavily influence whether that happens, whether the leadership itself is a part of the process or not. So I think about how all those different elements of leadership influence whether innovation can happen.
And you've both worked as consultants with organizations, and you're typically helping them create solutions. But as you work with people on the inside, what's the kind of mind shift that you see happen as people go through a different process of actually engaging with problems?
So being a facilitator of innovation, you might think that the motivation for the facilitator is to get great ideas. But really when you dig into it, it's usually about wanting to help transform the participants. And you see that happen, and it's not across the board, but out of a group of 10, you know that 4 or 5 are going to approach their work differently if you've really led a good session, and it's about helping them feel personal insight. So it's less about delivering a great idea, but they already have the ideas, so how can you help them realize they are creative, they have these ideas, and that they're relevant to the world?
I think about how people often struggle even to make a connection to creativity or what they're trying to do, and if we can help them feel more comfortable and much more like, hey, you know how to solve problems, let's do this together, and then make that connection to the needs. Certainly in my work, what I've seen more often is when someone really connects deeply with the needs they're trying to solve for, either the user and what they're experiencing, or even just personally what needs to be changed, that they're engaged at a whole different level and can come up with different solutions in that way.
So I've had the pleasure working with both of you on this program in India called Global Citizen Leader Program. So can you speak a little bit about your experience, particularly about the kind of transformation that you see in the students as a result of the work you've done?
Yeah, so 2 years ago I helped on the program, I brought some of the design thinking tools to combine with the leadership training program. And one of the areas that I felt very passionate about but was cautious was the topic of empathy. So for a lot of the innovation work that I do, it starts with creating an empathic connection with those you're trying to serve. And what I saw in India was that empathy is treated a bit differently, that there are some cultural beliefs of if you have run into some sort of trouble, that perhaps you deserve that trouble, that maybe something happened in a former life, and I shouldn't help you because you're meant to have this difficulty. And so that's a disconnect for empathy. So I didn't know what would happen as I presented this topic of we share a similar emotional set and that we are biologically almost identical to each other, and that by connecting at an emotional level, we can better understand others, which helps us better understand ourselves, which then can impact the world. And in that first program that I ran on empathy, I was blown away by just the vulnerability that the students showed and how willing they were to allow that to change their approach throughout the program.
I was very excited about the hunger that I got to experience amongst the students and the tools and how quickly they were ready to adapt and use those tools. It's beautiful to see there isn't a lot of baggage. Design thinking is an excellent tool for us to use as they're becoming global leaders and as they're working with the biggest companies in the world on challenges, that they're ready to learn about the tools, implement them right away. I'm very excited about the future, given the students I've gotten to interact with.
Great. And a more personal question. I know that you have young children, and as you think about their development, what is it that you would like to give to them that will help them be successful in a world that's very, very fast changing?
Yeah, so the main thing for me, and I put this in my LinkedIn profile a year ago, and it really has stuck with me, as I view myself as a defender of creativity, and that really applies at home. And so that's the thing that gets me fired up, is if I can see an instance where their creativity might be stifled, and I can step in and somehow encourage them to know it's okay. It's okay to fail, it's okay to do it differently, but what did we learn from it? How are you going to reapply that in the future? And so I think embedding that capability for them to approach life as a rapid prototyping challenge, as how can I purposefully fail and learn from this in order to do better the next time.
Yeah, I think a lot about just what I don't want them to have, which is a bunch of assumptions or a bunch of baggage going into adulthood. And with having daughters, I want them to feel free to go into the world knowing that they're capable of doing anything, and a confidence that they can figure it out.
Great, and maybe a final question. So as you work in the space and you think about, well, what would the world look like if every young person had the opportunity to develop these capabilities and skills? Could you envision that, and what might that do for the world?
Yeah, so I know there are phases, at least I've gone through in my career. And coming out of college, I was eager to leverage the learning that I had done and for it to then have an impact on my finances. And so I think that's a real issue, but at some point I turned the corner and, well, what impact is my day having on other people? And that's where I really started to connect with the innovation process. So innovation isn't just, how do I solve this problem and make the most amount of money, but how do I actually have a long-lasting impact on those that I'm trying to solve for? And so as you start to connect with people and as you start to create that connection, it changes the entire outlook of why do we work? Why am I showing up each day? What skill sets do I have uniquely that I can leverage to help others? So I think that transition might happen sooner for people as they're exposed to more and more of these skill sets.
I think about the freedom people would have to be themselves, and then also the ability to let others be who they should be. And so these tools would give that framework for you have people helping to find their place in the world, but make space for other people to find theirs instead of a competitive environment, more of a working together. That's what I would envision happening as the world takes on these things.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing those with us.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks.